are a lot of clubs positioning themselves for next year's Premier League season with the mentality of Champions League or bust. They gotta get that top 4, maybe top 5, or else it's not a successful season. And while that is the barometer for some of these clubs, we need to remember that that's a lot harder than it used to be. We're gonna talk about that next here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub. Is it fair to say top 5 or bust? It really depends on who you are as a club, but there are a lot of clubs, particularly big clubs, the old Big Six clubs, who see that almost as a birthright, and that if they don't achieve one of those spots, then their season was not successful. And for a long time, that was true. All the big clubs had a chance to win, and the worst case scenario would be, okay, at least we got a top 4 finish. But times have changed, and the Premier League is deeper than ever. And that top 4 or top 5 finish, and even guaranteeing a European spot, is no longer as simple as it once was. There are too many good clubs, there are too few easily winnable games on the schedule, and the God-given right to be in Europe is just no longer what it once was, and I don't think most fans have adjusted. So we're going to talk about that today, but before we do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below so you can follow the channel. Get in the comment section, where do you think your club falls in here? Is the top 6 or top 5 or top 4? Is that a given? Is that where you should be attaining and striving for? Go ahead and get in the comments and let me know who your club is that you're supporting. You can also leave comments on Twitter and Blue Sky at Pitchside Pub, and check out the website pitchsidepub.com. So my impetus for this was a tweet from the Prem Debrief, who has a great account that you should check out, and he said, should Manchester United fans be okay with a top 8 finish next year and probably not doing that well in the cups? Now take the cups aside, because for me, if I have a club that's spending a lot of money and should be better, and let's face it, Manchester United should be better than they were last year. Last year was a debacle. So in their case specifically, they definitely should be better this year than they were next year. Let's just put that out there right now. But if they're not going to compete for a Champions League spot, I would like to at least see a deep cup run from them. If you're not going to compete on the top fronts, you could do what a Crystal Palace or a Newcastle did this year and make a deep run and maybe win a cup. So take that part out, but just the top 8 for now. It's a valid question. Should Manchester United really be considered a top 8 club for next year? And more importantly, this was from the fans' perspective. Would you be disappointed if they don't get a top 8 finish? And of course, the backlash was, what are you talking about? Manchester United not being top 8? How could we fathom such a thing, as they sit in the bottom quarter of the table at the end of last year? But obviously that was an anomaly. They should not be down in that 15, 16, 17 range again, like they spent most of this season, and that really should not happen. But there's a big gap between 16th, 17th, and 4th and 5th. And we saw that this year in talent. So first of all, the question is, how much can they specifically make up their ground? And the list of clubs who have jumped from that far down in the table to a European spot is a very, very short list. So let's temper expectations with United in general. But it got me thinking as a bigger picture outside of the sort of Manchester United bubble, which is, it's harder than it used to be to get one of those European spots. And the Champions League, yes, they are probably going to have 5 spots again rather than 4. That is probably something that will continue more years than not for the Premier League. But let's say top 4 or top 5. That is getting harder to do. And these big clubs used to just see that as sort of an automatic. Those 6 were going to be in some order, and the worst 2 might get 5th or 6th and might get a Europa League, berth. The Conference League wasn't even around necessarily at that time. But that, it was going to be those 4 teams that got it. And so it was a little bit of musical chairs. 6 teams vying for 4 spots, and the 2 that didn't get it probably fired their coaches and considered it a terrible year. That's not the case anymore. If you finish 6th in the Premier League, you are a good football club. Aston Villa finished 6th this year. They are a darn good football club, as evidenced by their Champions League run and the success that they had there, which, by the way, probably cost them a few points and maybe a spot or 2 in the table this year, trying to play on both fronts. Brighton had that issue a couple years ago. They finished 8th. They're a darn good club. They're going to the Conference League this year. Nottingham Forest was a darn good club this year. They finished 7th. They were in those Champions League spots before they faded down. And so you've got all these new, people at the party who have a legitimate shot. Newcastle, Villa, Nottingham Forest, Brighton took 4 of the 8 European spots that were given out by the table. Forget what Crystal Palace achieved, as the FA Cup champions. They earned one. They're a non-traditional team as well, going to play in Europe, but they didn't earn it in the table. But 4 of the 8 spots went to non-Big Six clubs, and that's really remarkable. And there were a few others knocking on the door. Bournemouth wasn't too far off. Fulham wasn't too far off. Brentford has been relevant for a long time. They weren't all that far away. They were competing into the final month of the season for some of those spots as well. So there is so much depth that I don't think you can look at even a club like Manchester United. And obviously the bar for them should be that high, but you've got more clubs saying their bar should be that high than you have spots available to them. Arsenal's going to say that. Liverpool's going to say that. Manchester City's going to say that. Chelsea's going to say that. United's going to say it. Tottenham's going to say it. And now you've got Newcastle has lots of money to spend. Aston Villa has been very well run. Brighton has a lot of money now to spend, and they are a well-oiled machine. Brentford is using the numbers to their advantage. You've got so many clubs that have a viable chance to upset the apple cart here. And so to bring it back to United, no, of course they shouldn't be happy missing a spot and just go, oh, well, the league's tougher than it used to be. No, with their resources and their history and their caliber of players, they obviously should be competing for some of these spots. But the point here is that we've got to change our mentality. Good clubs are going to miss out on the Champions League. Some really good clubs may miss out on Europe altogether. It's only going to take one small hiccup, one adjustment period to new players, or one star player going down is going to make the difference. Newcastle's really good. Aston Villa's really good. Brighton's really good. They're going to continue to be good, and that is too many good clubs for not enough spots. We're playing a game of musical chairs here, and when the music stops, somebody's going to be left out in the cold, and fans really need to adjust to that. It can't be the sky is falling every time we don't make the Champions League. Should we want to do better? Absolutely. Do we need to review whether or not that, changes need to be made? Yeah, probably. But it can't be, oh, we didn't make the Champions League, let's fire our manager again, particularly in United or Tottenham's case where they're coming from so far down in the table after such disastrous seasons. So, we have to be a little more realistic about how we look at this. We're going to have a 3, maybe 4 team race next season with Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, maybe Chelsea with the way they're spending some of the moves they're making. Well, if we've got a 4-team race, a legitimate 4-team race to win the league, well, there's your Champions League spots. You may get a 5th one, but Newcastle's not going anywhere. Villa's not going anywhere. United and Tottenham want to come back to this party where they had been mainstays and then, disappeared for a year or two. It's too many clubs for not enough spots. And it's not like more Champions League spots should be added for England. I don't think that's fair. So every single year now, we're going to have more Champions League caliber worthy clubs than spots available to them, which means somebody's going to have a good season and still miss out because the league is just simply too deep. One hiccup here, a couple of draws here that should have been wins, a few drop points, and all of a sudden you're in the Europa League or you're on the outside looking into Europe completely. So I do think fans need to adjust the mentality. I get why it was that way for so long. That was accurate. If you were a big club and you weren't finishing in the top 4, that was a failure. It's not anymore. Coming in 5th, coming in 6th, coming in 7th in the Premier League does not make you a bad club, and it does not make your season a failure. If you can't wrap your head around that, then your expectations mirror that of a Premier League from 10 years ago, and it's simply not the case anymore. There's too much money coming in, too much talent. Even the relegated teams are spending. Sunderland has spent. Leeds has spent. The league is so deep, there are no easy points out there anymore. So we really got to wrap our head around the fact that, genuinely competing for the Champions League means you've had a pretty good season, and it's not this abstract, unmitigated failure if you somehow miss out on it. What do you think? Am I being too lenient? Am I making too many excuses, or does this make sense? Get down in that comment section. Let me know what you think. You can also leave some comments on Twitter and Blue Sky at Pitchside Pub. While we're at it, make sure you hit that subscribe button for me down below, and check out the website, pitchsidepub.com. Thanks as always for joining us here on Pints and Punditry at the Pitchside Pub.